When you ask an AI a question, it can give you an answer that sounds perfect, but sometimes if you check it, it's completely wrong. Not because something went wrong, but because this is exactly what it was designed to do. And that's the part most people don't realize. Picture this, you ask an AI something, it doesn't go to check the truth, it doesn't verify the facts, it doesn't look things up like a search engine. It generates answer instantly, one word at a time, based on probability. And most of the time that works, because correct answers usually follow predictable patterns, but it's not always like that. And when that breaks, the AI doesn't stop. It doesn't slow down. It just keeps going, as if everything is saying is correct, and it's kind of confidence when it's saying that. So you end up with something strange, an answer that sounds right and it feels right and you can read it perfectly, but it's not true. That's what people call hallucination. But that word makes it sound like a glitch. But if you look at it closely, it's a direct consequence of how that system is working. When you use AI, it feels like you are talking to something that understands things. You ask a question, you get a clean answer. Sometimes even better than what you would find on Google. So naturally you trust it. But then something breaks. It gives you an answer that is not just slightly off, it can be sometimes completely made up. And the weird part is it doesn't feel wrong. No hesitation, no warning, just a confident answer. And that's a gap between what it feels like the system is doing and what it's actually doing. At its core, the model is doing one thing, predicting the next word. If you give it a sentence like this, the capital of France, something blank, it says Paris, not because it understands geography, but because that sequence appears over and over in its training data. Now scale that up. Every answer, every explanation is built the same way. Step by step, the model is asking what comes next so this sounds like a correct answer. And most of the time that's enough, but that only works when the pattern is strong. When the question is common, the model has seen it before. The path is clear. But when the question is niche, very specific or not well represented, that path disappears. Now the model doesn't have a clear answer, but it still has to continue. And this is the constraint. It doesn't get to stop. It doesn't get to say, I'm not sure. And that means even when the model has no real answer, it still has to produce one. So instead of stopping, it selects the most plausible continuation and keeps going. That's the moment things start to break. And here is where it becomes irreversible. Once the model starts going on a direction, it has to stay consistent with what it already said, because every next word depends on previous ones. So even if the beginning is slightly wrong, the rest of the answer is forced to agree with. It cannot suddenly contradict itself. That would sound unnatural for the model. So instead, it builds around the mistake. And now you don't just get a small error. You get a full of explanation that supports that error. At this point, something subtle changes. The system is no longer optimizing for truth. It is optimizing for coherence, because a coherent answer feels correct. So if it has to choose between something uncertain and incomplete or something smooth and fully structured, it will lean toward the one that flows better, even if it's wrong. And this is the turning point. A wrong answer that sounds clean and confident can actually win over a correct answer that feels uncertain. And this is where it becomes dangerous. The model has learned how correct answers sound. Clear structure, logical flow, and confident tone. And your brain uses those exact signals to decide what to trust. If something is easy to read, you assume it's correct. So when the AI makes something up, it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like information. And that's why it's so hard to notice, because the system is not producing answers. It's producing convincing answers. So hallucination isn't some rare failure. It's what happens when you ask a probability system for certainty. Most of the time, truth and probability overlap. But when they don't, the model doesn't know. It just keeps following probability all the way to the end. So the real shift that you have to focus on is this. Stop thinking AI as something that knows things. Start thinking of it as something that generates answer that sounds right. That doesn't make it useless, but it makes it powerful in a different way. It also means you have to change how you use it. Instead of asking, is this correct? Ask this, does this make sense, or can I verify it? Because with AI, confidence and correctness are not the same thing. So why does AI make stuff up? Because most of the time the correct answer is also the most likely answer. But it's not always like that. And when those two things separate, the model doesn't notice. It just keeps going. And that's how you get an answer that sounds perfect, but it's not real. And once you see it, every answer starts to feel different. The next time an AI gives you a clean, confident answer, pause for a second and ask, did it actually know that, or did it just sound like it did? This is ML Guy, and together we will go deep to understand the systems under the hood. Until the next video, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Bye.